Hi, I'm Dermot Coonan, Counselling Psychologist, and welcome to day 3 of our Wellbeing Support Group. Today, we're looking at the similarities between the lockdown and depression in what we've titled Recovering from the Pandemic of Depression. The reason why we're looking at the similarities is because maybe if we treated this situation, our behaviors and our moods in the way that we treat depression, we might be able to recover from this situation more quickly. I want to recap on what we spoke about in our last talk on day 2. We were talking about the fact that with lockdown, with social isolation and distancing, we might be in very limited physical space. And this means that situations that cause us stress can feel even stronger because we don't feel like we're able to escape so easily. We need to understand our stressors. When working with anger management, we talk about somebody like an angry parent coming at us as if they're offering us an invitation to be angry back. A flatmate who's very pessimistic or very negative, almost like they're giving us an invitation to feel pessimistic and negative too. But with all invitations, we're allowed respond by saying, no, I'm not taking that. I'm not going to join you in your anger. I'm not going to join you in your pessimism. But it can take practice to do this. And that's why sometimes we rehearse these situations so we're prepared. As the young man was that I mentioned yesterday, whose dad got annoyed with him every time he came home 5 minutes late from his friends. He decided to rehearse and he said, I'm going to go in the door as calmly as possible. I'm going to say, I'm sorry for being 5 minutes late. I'm now going to get some food to eat and I'm going upstairs. Good night, Dad. He said that on the first day and his dad continued to shout at him angrily. The second day, the same thing. And the next time after that he happened to be late back from his friends, his dad saw that he was giving an invitation to his son to be angry, but his son was just not taking it. And that rehearsal really helped him and helped his dad then to respond more calmly. But there are some stressors that we could reduce or remove. If you're finding the news is dragging you down, maybe watch less of it. Maybe look for positive news instead. There is positive news out there and it's worth looking at. We also talk about reframing. So that means that we see from a different perspective what's happening. If we have these routine stressors where it's a regular argument with dad, we can now see it not as something we dread or are afraid of happening, but we reframe it as an opportunity to change how we interact. And that opportunity is very positive because it can help us to learn that we have more control, we have more power than we thought we had. All of this can help us to create more mental space, taking our stressors down. Creating mental space also means developing ways to escape from our physical reality of being in a small space by using things like technology. For me, favorite uses of technology would be to watch nature documentaries, to listen to Radio Garden, which is a global radio app that is free to use, or to play GeoGuessr, which uses Google Maps, where you guess from street level views what country you're in and realize that you might be 10,000 kilometers south of where the images are coming from. For me, that's kind of a fun escape. Others might find that skill development is a great escape. Our great poet W.B. Yeats talked about how we could not tell the dancer from the dance. And this is the experience so many of you have had when you're working on a skill and you're so in the skill that you almost forget who you are. You lose your sense of time. We call this in psychology flow, the flow experience. And the flow experience is high-level learning, where we are challenged right to the edge of our abilities. The challenge and abilities are just right. And this is something which can create for us mental space. We also look at imaginative expression. And while many of us have had difficult experiences growing up, it's so important to remember those smaller moments that were happier moments, that were really worthwhile. And it's good to write about them and remember them. Again, we're creating mental space by tapping into our memories of nice places we visited, of people we love, of people we've known, of experiences we've had. But you can also create new experiences using your imagination. You can walk on the moon if you just think about it for long enough and imagine what that would be like. I love the movie Gravity because I really get a sense that I'm floating in space. Imaginative expression can also be about playing music, doing art, dancing. There's so many options. And you don't have to be good at it. You don't have to show it to anybody. It's really to do it for yourself. That's the most important thing. So, as I said, we want to talk about this pandemic as if it was like depression, because we know how to treat depression well. We know how to help people get out of depression. And the ways in which we're being affected by this pandemic are quite similar. When we describe depression, we sometimes use the 3 Ps. Pervasive means the depression is in all areas of my life. Everything is more grey than before, lacking in colour. We would say that it feels permanent because I don't know when this ends. It seems like an endless experience of low mood. And then we'd also say that it feels very personal. I blame myself for my depression. I should be doing better. I'm depressed, but there are people out there who are suffering in so many other ways. I am so lucky in life, and yet I don't feel that way. Depression does that to us, and it's not our fault. So many of us have been experiencing depressive symptoms through the pandemic. We've felt that it has affected all areas of our lives. Our routines are not what they were. Maybe our roles, our connections, our activities are much more limited than before. So the lockdown has affected so many areas of our lives. And it's true to say that could be described as pervasive. We don't know when this ends. And that's difficult. That's a little bit like it was permanent. We're not sure when the lockdown ends. And even after that, will there be a second wave? We can't tell. Also, we might feel personally responsible for how we have reacted to the pandemic. We hear very inspiring stories of people doing very positive things, learning new languages, and many people are using this time as an opportunity to really look at what they value most, to really develop their skills and so on. And good for them. It's great that they can do this. But this is no reason to blame yourself if you haven't got past your first reaction just yet. Because our first reaction might be shock, and then we might start to choose, how do I want to be in this? To get out of depression, we first have to recognize the behavioral symptoms, my actions that are part of the depressive pattern. Lockdown can limit our life experiences. The distancing involved can lead us to feel less motivated to contact our friends. We might find ourselves talking less. It might seem easier to just start solitary gaming by myself, or binge watching TV shows that I like. And half an hour becomes 4 hours, and midnight becomes 4 a.m., and I'm still watching and wondering, I didn't get enough out of this day. Sleep goes out of balance. We might go to bed at a certain time, but we go to sleep much later, and we wake up much later, and very often we feel tired. Our sleep quality might not be very good because we maybe didn't do much exercise the day before. Maybe you didn't feel like you had any reason to exercise. We have to look at how emotions are affected. When we have depression, we need to understand the symptoms emotionally too. And the first thing is low mood. We're not very interested or excited about much. In fact, we can be pessimistic and see the dark side in most things. We also can find that our stress levels are up with depressed mood. And this means it's hard for us to tolerate things. We get frustrated and irritable much more easily than before. If you think of it this way, it's almost like we have 20% more stress with the thoughts associated with the pandemic humming around in our brain as we're doing our everyday things. The noisy neighbor becomes incredibly annoying. The difficulty with doing something like shopping goes from being not easy to seeming very difficult. And our motivation goes down. With depression, we talk about this and we say that do not wait for your motivation to come back. You need to do first, and then your motivation will kick in. So it could be a thing that you enjoy painting usually, but you don't feel like painting right now. If you do painting for 5 or 6 minutes, your motivation might start to grow gradually again. And you start with a promise to do 6 minutes of painting, and 20 minutes later, you're still painting. So motivation doesn't come first. Action before motivation is one of the ways we recover from depression. The lack of contact, the low levels of activity that we're experiencing at the moment is like depression, and it can make us feeling helpless and hopeless. And again, just like depression, we need to reverse this. There's some truth in the depressive perspective on life. It is true to say that life can be terrible. And it's hard to forget that there are very tough experiences happening for people out there right now. And it's very tough not to feel a bit worried and even a bit low about that. But this is true also to say that this is only one truth. There are other perspectives we can take too. Life can be terrible. It can be boring. It can be annoying. It can be exciting. It can be amazing. It can be full of love and happiness. We need to remember that we have brilliant caring doctors, nurses, first responders, the people working in the supermarkets to make sure that we have enough food, everyone in the food supply chain. And we have great scientists doing their very best to help people and find solutions as soon as they can. The first person that you need to help in recovering from all of this is yourself. So you started with a shock from the pandemic, and it's hard to get beyond that shock. But now is the time, and the best way to do this is to become a friend to yourself. You need to accept how you are doing right now. If you think of GPS, you cannot get guidance to wherever you want to go, and we want to go to recovery, without knowing your current location. without understanding where you are right now. I want you to look at each of the statements here and try to repeat the words. And take your time to see if you can accept them. The first time I read them, you might not fully accept what it is I'm saying. And I'd like you to score each statement by the degree to which you accept them, from 0, not at all, to 10, completely. So the first statement I want you to try and repeat until it seems real to you is, I did not expect the pandemic to affect me so much. I did not expect the pandemic to affect me so much. The second statement to rate and to repeat. Most people are feeling this way. It's not my fault that I feel this way. Most people are feeling this way. You can rate that out of 10. And then out of 10, it's not my fault that I feel this way. I am working to understand this. Again, repeat it to see, does it feel true to you? I am working to understand this. And you can rate out of 10 how much you believe this. I will try to be a friend to myself. How true is this now? I will try to be a friend to myself. When I recover more, I will be able to help and encourage others more. When I recover more, I will be able to help and encourage others more. How true does that sound to you now? It's important to remember that you can be more helpful. Even you listening to our videos and our presentations, even your participation in this support group by trying out ideas and seeing some work better for you, some not so good for you, that's okay. Sharing your experiences, sharing what is helpful to you, and asking questions that you really want to understand. All incredibly helpful, because it's helpful for me in terms of what I'm doing, but also helpful for other listeners to see that they are not alone, that what you find difficult, they may also find difficult, that what you find helpful may be helpful to them too. So your sharing is very helpful. You also might know of someone, a friend, a relative, a grandparent, who really could hear from a supportive person right now. So you could be more helpful by calling them. Just call them and say to them, how are you feeling? Let them know that you care, that you understand it's very hard, and that it's okay to feel worried or sad or annoyed. Telling them that you care is something that is really important right now. And you could also let them know what works for you, because that could be useful to them too. Thanks for your time, and please feel free to text your questions. They're always very welcome. Also, your ideas for things we need to talk about, really welcome too. Thank you again.